Hello everyone, this is Zooc and today I'm bringing you a cooking episode. Oh my god, how exciting! It's been a while since I made one of these, about a year I think, which is like the longest time between two videos that I've ever seen, pretty much. But this time I'm going to be cooking the flesh of a dead bird with a side of grains with no nutritional value whatsoever, almost. But I'm just messing. This is basically my spin on something called étouffée, which is a dish very popular in Louisiana. It's a Cajun dish, and I've been getting into Cajun cooking a lot lately. And it's basically fancy for stew, more or less. So what it is a chicken stew served with rice. Now these are not proprietary and do not belong to your mother, as it says in the title. They don't even belong to my mother, but who cares? They're pretty tasty nonetheless, and I hope you guys enjoy them. So here we go. Alright, the list of ingredients is pretty much as follows. 4 tiny onions, because I couldn't find bigger ones, but you can use 2 medium ones. 1 head of garlic, but we're only going to be using about 3 cloves. 1 rib of celery, a red pepper, and that's basically it for the veggies. 3 halves of chicken breast. You can use thighs if you must. Some basmati rice. I use Uncle Ben's because I like it the most and it gets very consistent results. Some Vegeta powder, which is basically dried veggies, salt, and some MSG, just like flavor enhancer stuff. And don't give me any bullshit about MSG. I don't want to hear it. Salt, pepper, some white wine. We're not going to be using a lot of that. And some tomato sauce, no basil, no extra crazy shit in this one, just simple pureed tomatoes. And I'm also going to be using a chicken stock cube. Now this is how you hold a knife. Pinch the blade, 3 fingers curled underneath, nothing fancy. Left hand, fingers curled, thumb tucked under. Start with the celery, trim off both ends, and I'm going to slice it in 3 lengthwise. And I'm basically just gonna chop it as fine as I can. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Behold my crazy chopping skills, and that table is wobbly as fuck. How to clean a red pepper. There are many ways, but this is my way and I prefer it. Slice off both ends, trim around the ribs, because the ribs being the white parts, they're bitter. And then just slice it in like 1/2 centimeter strips, and once you're done with all that, you cube it up. Tiny cubes, very simple, no fuss. How to clean onions. Trim off the head, chop the onion in half. Peel off the first layer because it's got like a kind of a tough skin. And these tiny onions are seriously super annoying to peel. This is just insane. I hate them. But in Prague, yeah, I just couldn't find bigger onions where I live here. So, fancy chopping skills again. Clean all that, slice it up vertically, and then that's it. Just chop it up fine. Now you can skip this step, but I prefer to clean all the nasty shit off my chicken. I like my meat clean. Now these little tiny chicken tenderloins, they have like a sort of a white vein tendon thing going on. So what you can do, you can just press it down with the nail, turn the knife with the blade up, and just peel that off, and you're set. Now what I'm going to do with this chicken is just cube it up in like 1 inch or about 2 centimeter cubes. This dish initially was my mother's, and she used to make it with like entire halves of chicken breast, but I find it's much better to just cube it up. Now how to peel a head of garlic. Press down as hard as you can, and like this, most cloves will actually come out clean. But if they don't, what you can do is just chop off the end, turn the blade sideways, and just give it a whack couple of times, and it'll just peel right off. Very easy way. Unfortunately, my mother refuses to learn this technique, and she like grabs a tiny knife and spends like 5 minutes on each clove. If the cloves have some nasty shit, just cut it off and you're set. And now what I'm gonna do is just slice the garlic real fine. You can just put it in the crusher basically to save yourself some time, but I keep wanting to show off how I handle a knife, so just ignore me. I'm just like a fucking attention whore anyway. So once all of that is done, what I'm going to do is grab a plate, put about 1/2 cup of flour in, some salt, some pepper, give it a whisk a few times, and dredge only half the chicken for now, because I don't have a pan that's like 1 meter in diameter. So I'm going to fry the chicken in 2 batches. The reason for that being is that too much chicken in a hot pan will bring the temperature down, and then the chicken will just sit there and boil instead of frying. My intention here is to brown the chicken, give it a nice color, and it doesn't have to be cooked through because it's going to boil in the stew overall. but it's nice to just get a bit of color and maybe a little bit of crunch on it as well. Now I'm going to measure 1 cup of rice. You can use any cup, any volume measurement. And yeah, that's fine, like anything. For 1 cup of rice, you need 1 3/4 cups of liquid. That is basically the perfect ratio I found to get absolutely consistent results with rice every single time. But what you have to do with it is give it some serious washing action. Like 3 or 4 washes. What I do is just put it in a bowl and wash it with a whisk. It rubs the grains together and it like removes as much starch as possible from the grains. So in the end, the rice will be separate and not clumped up. I hate clumpy rice. Really, really do. So just give it 3 or 4 washes until the water comes out pretty much clear. That's kind of the end result of this whole thing. And then like this is just very easy. Or you can just put it in a strainer if you have one with holes small enough and just put it under the shower or just cold water and rub it around with your hands. No problem there. Once that's done, just put it in a strainer and save it. Strain it and save it. That's how we say it over here. No, we don't. I don't know why the fuck I said that. Put it in a strainer and leave it for now. We're going to tend to that later on. And here I am just washing it some more, making sure that all the starch is out, or as much as possible at least. And I'm just going to set it there and move real slow, like I have no cares in the world. Anytime now. Let's get on. That's white rice. Fascinating. Now I'm heating up some oil in a pan on medium-high heat. How to test if the oil is ready to fry: put a piece of chicken in, and if you get a hard sizzle, then it's basically ready. So put like half of the chicken that is dredged and just leave it. Do not mess around with it. The idea here is to just give it a light brown crust on all sides of the cubes, and that'll be that. Now while that's done, I dredge the second half of the chicken cubes, and we're going to move on to making the rice now. It's pretty good timing actually, because the rice needs to sit for a while after it's done, and you can tend to the rest of the food while that's happening. So, how to make the perfect rice. Put a big pat of butter in a pan or in a tiny pot, in my case, on medium-high heat, and just let that melt down. No need to brown it, don't need to do anything crazy with it. Once it's melted, add some onions, about 1/3 of a cup of what we chopped before. Just took a bunch or like a handful out of those chopped onions and threw it in there. And saute them or sweat them for 3 minutes. That was pretty much random. You can leave it for more or less, but it turned out, I don't really time anything with this dish. It's just all like just how stuff looks like or whatever. So leave it for 3 minutes. And after 3 minutes, you will put in the rice. Let's see, am I going to put in the rice? Yes, I am. What a champ. Add in the rice and toast it. Also for about 1 or 2 minutes. And there I am spilling some water on the electric countertop because I'm an idiot. But that's fine. I'm just going to leave it there and pretend it didn't happen. So fry up the rice with the onions for about 3 minutes until you get like a really toasty smell. You do have to mix it a lot because rice will burn very easily. So once that's done, put in your 1 3/4 cups of water. And I'm going to add the chicken cube to that, mash it up and just throw it in there. And then I'm basically gonna leave it alone to come to a boil over medium-high heat. Let's see. Oh yes, got pieces of chicken cube all over the place. You can tell that I'm not really giving a fuck. I make a huge mess every time I cook, and my girlfriend ends up cleaning everything, so whatever. So I took half the chicken out and I'm adding the rest of it in. Same oil, no problem, also medium-high heat. And I left a wooden spoon in the rice because I'm making spoon-flavored rice over there, but it's okay. So once that comes to a boil, you put on the lid and you turn the heat to the lowest possible setting. Basically just barely a flame or barely anything there. And you leave it the fuck alone. No mixing, no stirring, no fucking around with it. Do not take the lid off. Set your timer for anywhere between 10 to 12 minutes. It really depends on what kind of rice you're using. But just leave it alone for 10 minutes. And best way to try out rice is to just taste it. If it's hard in the middle, then it's not done. You need to leave it for a couple of minutes more. But if it's, I like mine al dente, so not like mushy, but kind of decent textured. As you can see my fat face there, it's very serious and it's pretty much done. So once the rice is soft enough, what you do is turn off the heat and put a dry kitchen towel between the lid and the rice. And what that will do is absorb any sort of moisture that emanates from the rice, and so it won't fall back in as condensation occurs. So take it off the heat and put it somewhere warm, I suppose. You can put it in like a... Well, what I did was actually put it in the oven because it's just an empty space and it's out of the way. So just move that somewhere else. Now, once the second batch of chicken is done, I put in some oil again and I'm sweating some onions for, you guessed it, 3 minutes. That's kind of the average time of these, like, frying anything nowadays anyway. It just ends up being around 3 minutes. So once 3 minutes pass, I added the rest of the veggies, which is the red pepper and the celery. We have not added the garlic yet, so don't put that in just yet. And what I'm going to do is just saute all the veggies together for about 4 minutes for now, until we add some more stuff in them. The total is going to be about 7 minutes. So really this dish doesn't take long at all. Like, filming with downtime took about 1 hour, but the whole thing should be ready in half an hour. And I'm just adding some salt in there. It's important to salt stuff kind of at every step of the way. Every time you add an ingredient, you add a bit of salt. It's just, salt works in different ways on different types of vegetables and food in general. So you shouldn't like cook something and then season it once at the end. And there it is. I just had to do like fancy chef flips because I'm a show off. That really didn't need to be in there, but I included it anyway. So haha. So what I do now is add the spices, which I didn't mention before, but they will be in the description of the video. So a couple of bay leaves, kind of a must in this dish. Doesn't really taste as it should without bay leaves. Just add all of it in there. It's nice to fry up spices when you're in oil because a lot of spices are liposoluble. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. What I added there was half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of sweet paprika, and 1 tablespoon of thyme. Thyme is like the main flavor of this dish. And what I'm going to add in there is about a 1/4 cup of wine. But in the end, it's going to turn out to be about 1/3 cup in total. I'm just going to add some later on. So anyway, as I was talking about seasoning and spices, a lot of spices are liposoluble, so they develop more flavor when you fry them in fat as opposed to adding them to water. They don't dissolve in water. So I just added about half a cup of water there and some of that Vegeta powder, which it's kind of essential nowadays with how flavorless vegetables are. But if you're one of those crazy people who thinks MSG is going to kill you and make your brain explode, then just don't add any. Now, it's important to taste basically at every step because the seasoning is very finicky with dishes like this. Every time the sauce reduces down, it might need like a bit more sugar or a bit more saltiness or a bit more everything. So I just added an extra pinch of Vegeta thing, and now I'm just gonna dump all my meat in there and just let it stew. So it's gonna stew for about, as I said, like 3-4 minutes more. And I'm gonna add a 1/3 cup of tomato puree thing. So I'll just add that in there. And I'm gonna leave it for about 4 minutes more. This whole thing is very much based on intuition. Like there could be fixed cooking times if you're looking at an official recipe, but I really prefer to cook these things based on feeling. By feeling, I don't mean emotions, but yes, it's important to put in some love in there as well, as they like to say it in the movies. But it's mostly based on like, are the veggies cooked enough? Or is the chicken soft enough? Is it not raw inside? That's very important, of course. Is the sauce thick enough? Do you think it looks good? It's just use like all the senses to figure out whether the dish is ready or not. So I'm just adding like a bit of pepper in there. And this is kind of the last step actually. So everything that's left is just to let it stew a bit. And I'm adding just a bit of sugar because the tomato puree has some acidity. So it's nice to add a bit of sweetness to counteract that. Traditionally in chicken étouffée, it would be made with a roux, which is like a fat and flour mix to thicken the sauce. And then the chicken would just be stewed in there with some Cajun spices, but I prefer to separate it and add more thyme and less of the other stuff. I don't really like the extra spicy Cajun seasoning, so right there I'm tasting it again just to make sure everything's okay. And apparently it's not. It needs even more seasoning. God damn, that's a lot of stuff. But yeah. Just taste it basically at every step, even once you add the chicken in. Now, the reason we flour the chicken, or I flour the chicken initially, was that the flour from the chicken will thicken the sauce naturally. So you don't need to do the whole roux thing. In étouffée, they don't flour the meat, they just like brown it or fry it up for a little bit. But I prefer to do it this way because the flour on the chicken will absorb some of the sauce, and so every chicken will have more flavor to it than if it wasn't floured. So if everything went according to directions, your rice should look like this. No sticking, perfectly white, a neat block of rice right now. But an important thing to do after this step is just to fluff it up. So just take a couple of forks and separate basically every grain until you don't have any clumps left. And this seriously is foolproof technique of making rice. It works for me every single time. I know rice is one of those things that the internet is full of recipes of, like, how do you do this? How do you do that? But it's so simple. 1 cup of rice, 1 3/4 cups of liquid, and you're set. But I prefer to add onions in mine because it gives it a really nice flavor. You can skip the onions if you don't like it. Just toast the rice in butter, add water, salt, or Vegeta powder, and that's it. But I like to add the chicken cube as well, just for an extra layer of tastiness. So how to plate up, make a hole in the middle, put the chicken in, make sure there's enough sauce to make it interesting, and that's basically it. This is not Yo Mama's chicken and rice. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you for the next episode. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.